We asked you to tell us who's left you feeling ripped off. And you contacted us in your thousands by post, email, even stopping us on the streets. And the message couldn't be clearer.
I think there's a lot of hidden information about your bills that should be made a lot more clear.
I don't feel I get treated how I should be.
You've told us with money tighter than ever, you need to be sure that every pound you spend is worth it.
How do I get me money back? Because I just think I'm entitled to it.
So whether it's a deliberate rip-off, a simple mistake, or a catch in the small print, we'll find out why it is that you're out of pocket and what you can do about it.
Keep asking the questions, go to the top if you have to.
We do get results. I mean, that's the interesting thing.
Your stories, your money. This is Rip Off Britain. We're talking about insurance, a topic that upsets you more than just about anything else. Because whether it's a claim on your home or your holiday, it seems there are no end of reasons why your policy won't pay out.
Now, sometimes that's because you've been caught out by the small print, or indeed the terms of your cover simply aren't clear enough. On other occasions, perhaps the company's just messed up. But whatever the explanation, when you need help but your claim is turned down, the consequences can be absolutely devastating.
Later in the programme, we'll meet a family who know that only too well. On top of everything else they've been through, they now face losing their home.
Without the insurance payout, I can't afford to keep the house because I can't afford the mortgage payments.
Now, around half of all adults in the UK have some sort of life insurance policy. The idea being, of course, that if the worst actually happens, our loved ones will have some financial support and security. But how many of us fully understand the implications of what we signed up to, or how devastating the effects can be if it turns out that all those premiums haven't bought the protection that we expected? This next story is about a family who were horrified to discover a time restriction on a policy they believed lasted a full 5 years. And when you hear what happened to them, if you've got life insurance, you might just want to go and check the wording. It was January 2011 when Kim Holland thought it would be worth her husband seeing a doctor. But she had no idea it might be serious.
Paul didn't really have any symptoms. He sort of had a kind of a symptom in January where he would be taking calls at work, and if he had to write things down, he'd find that he was almost going dyslexic. So he was working from home one day, and I said, I've made an appointment for the doctors for you, just to have a checkup. The doctor sent him for a scan, and that's when he was diagnosed with a brain tumour.
The news hit the family very hard.
I just felt like someone stabbed me in the heart.
Shock, disbelief, just unbelievable. I felt I was living in a dream. Just because he'd been so healthy, never ill or anything.
Yes, I'm just devastated, really. I think you never think it's going to happen to you, and all of a sudden your world comes crashing down in a matter of seconds, and it's awful.
By the next month, the doctors had concluded that Paul's tumour was inoperable and terminal. They thought he may only have 4 or 5 years left. And while no one could have predicted any of this, Paul had taken steps to ensure that should the worst happen, his family would be protected.
We've always had life insurance. Paul always made sure we were covered, from when we were married.
In 2006, Paul had taken out a 5-year life insurance policy with Royal Liver. So after receiving his diagnosis, he phoned the company to discuss it.
A lady took the telephone call and said she would get back to him. And when she got back to him, she said that it wasn't valid. We was just shocked, in shock, absolute shock. We just couldn't believe it.
Royal Liver told Paul that for his policy to pay out for a terminal illness, that illness would have had to have been diagnosed before the final 12 months of the policy. So as Paul's was only spotted later, he wouldn't be covered. And though such a condition is common in policies of this type, Kim considers it very unfair.
Because we hadn't given them a year's notice. Paul hadn't said, I'm giving you a year's notice because I have a terminal illness, which is absolutely stupid because how can anybody tell how long they've got to live? What we thought we bought was a 5-year policy, but in actual fact, it isn't a 5-year policy. It's only a 4-year policy. So, you know, why would anybody in their right mind take out a policy like that? You just wouldn't do it.
Unfortunately for the Hollands, the clause is based on an industry-wide definition of terminal illness, which is that death occurs within 12 months of diagnosis. But it's a clause that's frequently missed or indeed misunderstood. The only other way that Paul's insurance would pay out would be if he died in the policy's few remaining months. So although this seemed unlikely, he continued paying the premiums. And as his health deteriorated, his family's future was very much on his mind.
Paul never stopped talking about it. He'd go in every single day to the hospice, and he was just so worried about us. What would we do? Who would look after us?
Despite the initial prognosis, very sadly, last December, Paul died.
Did everything he could for us, all the time. I can't even put it into words how good he was. He's brilliant.
Paul died after his policy had run out. And as his terminal illness had been diagnosed within its last few months, his death didn't meet either of the terms under which his life insurance would pay out. So as well as dealing with their grief, his family have had to face up to leaving their home.
Without the insurance payout, I can't afford to keep the house because I can't afford the mortgage payments a month. So I've had to put the house on the market. We did everything together in this house. Paul and I did the garden. It's a family house. The children were brought up here. It's very sad.
I'm so upset about it. It's our family home. We've grown up here. All our memories of Dad are here.
For us to leave, it is quite devastating.
Insurance company Royal Liver is now part of the Royal London Group. Now, when we contacted them, they reiterated the terms under which Paul's policy would have paid out, and explained that there's usually exclusion in the final year for terminal illness, as without it, the policy would effectively provide cover for a year longer than the policy term. They said they're committed to treating customers fairly and consistently, but stress it's extremely important for consumers to consult a financial advisor before taking out a life insurance or terminal or critical illness policy, to help determine if they have the full and appropriate cover, or to identify issues which could later cause a problem. And they said if Kim believes that the insurance was missold, she should raise that with the advisory firm responsible for the sale. Meanwhile, Kim is preparing to leave the family home.
Well, it's all nearly completed now. I've got a buyer for it, and I'm probably due to move out within 5 to 6 weeks. I wouldn't want anybody to go through what I'm having to go through, to lose their house. I would tell them to read their policy, and I would certainly tell them to not take that policy if it's got that clause where you have to give a year's notice for a terminal illness, because you just never, ever know what's around the corner.